we're using pre-designed and curated sounds to avoid turning this into an hour-long sound design tutorial. They're available for FL Studio license holders from the link in the video information. We'll start from an empty project. First, let's drop in some of the sounds to the channel rack. To speed this up, I will shift-click to make a continuous selection in the browser. Control-click to add to the selection. Cool. Now we have hats, a kick, and a snare. When your mouse is over a channel button, hold Shift and roll your mouse wheel up or down to reorder it. Almost forgot, we will need a Roland 909 style open hat for this. You can right-click channel buttons to see step sequencer fill options. For the kick, let's choose Fill each 4 steps so we get a 4 to the floor kick pattern. For a traditional snare pattern on 2 and 4, select Fill each 8 steps, then hold Ctrl and Shift and use your left and right arrow keys to move steps left and right. Alternatively, use the rotate functions in the channel button right-click menu. Let's add some steps for the hats too. Click this button on the channel rack to open the graph editor. Here you can quickly change velocity and other node parameters from the step sequencer view. You can also open it momentarily when holding K on your keyboard. Shift, click and drag on the selection rectangles in the channel rack to select more than one channel. Now, go to the channel rack menu to give your channels some color. Select Color Selected and choose a gradient, or as I'm doing here, a single color for all, using this button. Now, let's link these channels to the mixer. I'll select them all and select a mixer track down here. Right-click it and select Route Selected Channels starting from this track. You can also do this via pressing Ctrl, Shift and L. Wonderful! FL Studio has automatically colored and named the mixer tracks. Now we know what's going where. This is the playlist, where you arrange musical patterns. The brush tool is selected, so I can left-click and drag to paint multiple instances of the selected pattern into the playlist. Speaking of patterns, FL Studio is in pattern mode, which will simply loop the selected pattern. To play the playlist, I'll have to switch it to song mode here. The L key on your keyboard will switch between pattern and song mode. Cool. That's the same thing 4 times though. Let's make variations. Click the top left corner of a pattern to open its pattern menu. Select Make Unique to make this instance unique. That means edits to this one won't affect the other instances, which can also be handy. FL Studio auto-named the unique copies pattern 2 and 3 so you can tell them apart. So let's open pattern 3 and change it. Cool. Trance music is known for repetitive driving bass lines. Here's where trance subgenres vary greatly. In this video, however, I'll go for a classic octave jumping bass that works well at higher tempos. I'll drag in the bass patch from the browser. This is a patcher patch with 2 synthesizers, one for the main sound and one for the extra low sub-bass. The sub-bass is going to come out of the mixer track to the right of the bass patch. So let's color that and call that sub-bass. Before we record the bass line, let's cheat and turn the tempo down. Click and drag down on the tempo selector, so it's easier to hit the right timing. Right-click the record button, make sure Notes is selected. Notice I have also selected Recording Starts Playback, so when I click the record button, FL Studio will start playing immediately. Input quantization is also selected, meaning note start and end times will snap to the nearest available grid line dictated by your main snap setting. which I will change to half beats. I will also make sure I give myself a recording pre-count so I have some time to set up my hands before recording. Now all that's left to do is click the record button or press R on your keyboard. Hold on, almost ready. If you're completely new to FL Studio, you will likely see this pop up when clicking the record button. Select Don't Show This Again and Notes and Automation, then right-click the record button again to deselect automation so you don't accidentally record anything else. Okay, now we can record. Cool. Let's decide on a tempo now. This style of bass line works well with faster tempos, so I'll right-click the tempo selector and choose 150 BPM. Nice. The bass is a lot louder than it needs to be, and there is also some clashing with the kick drum, so I'll drop a Love Filter preset I made onto the bass and sub-bass mixer tracks. This lowers or ducks the volume of the incoming sound every quarter note. As the kick drum plays every quarter note, the bass will sound like it's being pushed down by the kick now. Perfect. A big element in trance music is chords. What's often done is, multiple synths are used to play the same or very similar notes, a concept called layering. We'll start with what's known as a supersaw sound from Citrus. Now we'll add a layer from Hammer and change the notes around a bit. Select All and press Ctrl and arrow up to transpose the notes up an octave. While you weren't looking, I've added yet another layer. Now we have three sounds that occupy the same tonal space in the mix. Let's make a buzz track for them. I'll select an empty mixer track and use Alt and left or right arrow keys to move it in the mixer. Now I'll select the chord tracks with Shift, Control, click and drag, and right-click the free mixer track's routing arrow. Select Route to this track only to unroute them from the master track and instead route to the free track. You can also do this by holding Control and clicking the routing arrow. Now it's a buzz track, a track that receives input from other tracks. This allows me to level all of the chord sounds with one fader. Let's write a turnaround for this chord progression. I'll select everything in the playlist via Control, click and drag, and then use Shift, click and drag on the selected items to duplicate them. You can also use Control and B to duplicate the selected items instead. After that, I'll select the last patterns of the bass and chords, then go to the playlist edit menu and select Make Unique from there. This will make all selected clips unique. Press Y in the piano roll to change to the preview tool. You can now click and drag left to right to hear the notes in order. Let's add an arpeggio, a sequence of repeating notes. Typically, those are chords that are broken up into their individual notes and then played one after the other. However, despite the obvious, it's not always necessary to change an arpeggio's notes with every chord change. Repetition legitimizes, and the musical school of minimalism has made that very clear. Find the right sequence of notes, and it can fit with all chords of your progression and help tie your sound together in the process. One thing a lot of trance music does is fast 16th note snare rolls. I'll demo that using a 909 snare, a sound used in most dance music. I'll just drop it on a playlist track header, add it as an instrument track, and then tweak some of the sampler settings. Now I'll fill in all the steps in the pattern. Actually, let's make that twice as long. Drag the right edge of the channel rack to see more steps. Now I'll double-click the pattern to see the piano roll. Right-click and drag in the lower area of the piano roll to change per note parameters in a linear fashion. I'll do velocity, which in this case means volume, and pitch. Cool. Time to add a lead. A lead sound is supposed to focus the listener's attention and take the main role in the song. So be sure that you can hum, sing or whistle what you're about to play with the lead sound. That is a good indicator of a memorable lead melody. Alright, now let's arrange this a bit. I would like the lead to come in as a B part, so the chords take the main role before the lead takes over. So I'll move the lead over here and select all the other clips, then duplicate them. Next, I'll start adding some sound effects I've curated. At the end of the snare roll, I want a small burst of noise to tie things over into the next part, where the lead plays. To support that musically, I will also make space for it. Remove everything that's playing on top of it. Click and drag the right edge of clips in the playlist to resize them. I'll also add a small audio fade in here by clicking and dragging the fade in handle. Then I'll add a longer noise rise sound that stops right before my short burst of noise. Now I'll get some noise bursts that can go on the first bar of both sections. And I've also got a reverse kick drum that is in tune with the bass line, so I'll add that as a little fill right here. Trance music often has high-passed classic breakbeats in the background. These are often called top loops. I'll add some in Slice X here and tuck them into the mix. At the end of what we have now, let's signpost another change that's about to happen with a drum fill. I'll drag it into the playlist as an audio track. Since we set up another change, let's build the section after this now. I will add the other top loop and select the 303 sound from Transistor Bass to go here. And for good measure, let's add some keys and extend the lead, but keep the amount of notes to a minimum so the new elements can shine. Alright, now that we have this energy gradient going, we should think about how to start building up to the energy level at the start of what's in the project now. I'll give myself 16 extra bars to do that. Select everything and move it 16 bars to the right. First, we'll need some sort of bassy impact sound, like this one. This creates a bit of excitement right at the start and also has the benefit of making it easier for DJ software to automatically detect the tempo of the song. A lot of trance music starts off with low energy, slow chords from keyboard instruments and pads. I'll get a piano patch and play the main chord progression slowly. For low end, I'll add another 303 patch and gradually filter it in. Let's add a drum break to introduce some easy to follow metronomic elements as the track builds up. I'll add an 808 clap sound next, which will do the classic EDM build-up pattern. You've all heard it before, so no reason to show it in isolation. Add a sub-bass boom right before the drop for maximum impact. Recycle the 909 snare roll and add a 909 crash on the sub-boom. Et voila! A serviceable build-up. And with that, we've reached the end of the tutorial. No, the track isn't finished, but as with other videos in this series, it should get you started on the right track for most types of trance music, except perhaps psytrance.